erato and terpsichore, polymnia, urania, and most important of all, Calippe, for she attends upon respected lords. And when the daughters of great Zeus would bring honor upon a heaven-favored lord, and when they watch him being born, they pour sweet dew upon his tongue, and from his lips flowed honeyed words. All people look at him, to him, and he is giving judgment uprightly. Honey. We start then with the Muses, who delight with song and the mighty mind of Father Zeus within Olympus, telling of things that are, that will be, and that were, with voices joined in harmony. Muse, down, Cerberus, down, good dog, good little doggy. Oh, it's only a little friend, Cleo, who has brought it a nice little sop of honey lies. Satan, the muse of history, I'd quite forgotten our appointment. And there she is, irreclaimably classic and never forgetting her plastic poses, indiscreet beyond all other immortals, and of course, an hour before her time. Still, my performance needs her reporting, and although she is a fool of the first water, she has rubbed shoulders in her professional capacity with so many celebrated persons that she may muster as intelligent. Since she has cost me my brief moment of privacy, let me amuse myself a little by mystifying her. The barking has ceased. Enter the muse, which the marble imperiously of the victory of the samurais, and very angry in an operatic way. She does not recognize Satan in the dark. Insolence, I call it, insolence, I tell you. I am invited to attend your master, and you shall answer to him, whoever you are, for having kept me waiting out here with Cerberus. Hello, yeah, you there, in the dark, hello, tell my lord Satan that Cleo waits upon him. Cleo, muse of history, not to be mistaken for that newfangled impostor who makes free with my name, to retail vulgar details about laws and institutions, and the price of eggs and foods and stuff. Cleo, real muse of real history, sister of tragedy, and the impassioned lyric, and dealing only with deeds heroic, elevating, and most often destructive. All right, don't be flustered. No one would ever mistaken you for anything scientific, my dear Cleo. Taken aback, the muse. The voice of Satan himself? She curtsies in several directions in the dark. Forgive me, Prince of Darkness. Your kingdom seems even less well lit than usual. After the garish modern world, I thought I had to do with some attent fiend new to the service. Why, even Cerberus himself scarcely knew my voice. Satan has risen and shakes hand. 1,000 apologies, dearest muse. The fires of hell long have been extinguished, for no one took them seriously in these godless days. Your precarious eyes will grow more accustomed to this dear primeval darkness. And after my coming ballet, the light of earth will no longer offend you, even though there the gloom of touch of chaos will prevail. But come, let us have a look at each other, my excellent old friend. Satan increases the ominous light, which emanates from his person and is revealed like a tempestuous moon, thinly veiled in clouds, beautiful, archangelic, without age or sex, all-powerful, omniscient, sad, but with much sense of humor. Satan pointing to the other corner of the Empire sofa. Come, Cleo, sit opposite where I can look at you, dear old Cleo. Oh, I am glad to see you're quite unchanged. Classic even to the invariable key pattern of your hem. The same majestic emboyment, like some ample-bosomed prima donna in a Wagner opera, but with the incomparable contralto, luscious but roaring, suitable to handle, not aged a bit. You are too good, my lord, and your ancient friendship does not see the ravages of time in my poor wrinkled face. Cleo takes out a powder puff and applies it with a frank and delicate grace. But as to you, my lord, Satan of all creative and created forces alone maintains unblemished youth. Satan shakes his head. The muse, anxious to make herself agreeable after the gaffe committed, on entering looks around her of something to say. How truly restful is not this ancient place, this ideal retreat. I always say, for one uniting in his person action, thought and fancy. Satan bows one hand on his heart. A good old place. The only bit still left of the deep void and darkness whence life and light across to plague me and be plagued by me. You know it well of old, but such are the regrettable compromises with error to which professional men of letters and even muses are obliged, that you yourself, I notice, have more than once described this house of quite brooding evil as peopled with the myriad damned who encumber the world above with their dead carcasses and equally offensive living souls. To think that poets and divines have packed these restful solitudes with brimstone flames, bogs of boiling mud, lakes of ice, viewless winds, all crammed with gargulous deceased humans. Little did I guess when I made a old moralist vindictive, that not being satisfied with what Satan makes of earth, this vindictiveness will intrude feeble copies thereof into his own dwelling, whence he sends evil to suffer and avenge itself above. Too true, alas, my lord. The literary trade is frequently obliged to make truth acceptable by standing it on its head. For instance, put what people call hell below one when it is so visibly above. The earth's surface, time it ever death, when it's obviously present during life. But misrepresentations of this trifling kind of crumbled rose leaves in the arch fiend's bed, and forgive the indiscretion of a soul, a friendship, you seem a little depressed today. Anything gone wrong? Satan. Oh no, everything as it should be. Evil hatched everywhere. And in another hour, triumphant through one half of earth. I am only bored, and that is not unusual with me. Muse. Bored, my lord, dear Lord Satan. Bored? Why, you have invited me to report the very greatest performance you have ever staged. Yes, I truly think the finest. By the way, did you pass on my invitation to the age to come? The ages to come? I have, my lord, I have, yes, and they will be here in good time. That's right, they shall have front stalls, or they are more appreciative than the virtues of our audience, who always fall asleep when the performance offends their principles. But as to you, your seat is next to mine, as beseech the great recording muse. Ha ha ha! Kept hands in delight. Dear Lord Satan, my dear Lord Satan, we are very old friends, Cleo. What would history have to record but for the doings of Satan? And save for your varied talents, what memory would there be for evil deeds? But come, let us have a little chat, dear old muse. There is still half an hour till the bell rings and we go aloft. Except your disembodied friends, the ages to come, no one will have admittance here below. Some of the virtues would doubtless enjoy seeing my quiet home, but it is thin dehumanized atmosphere makes them cough. And as to our orchestra of human passions, they are always in training, and it is the ballet master's duty to summon them in time. All else is ready. I need scarce remind you that the real preparation for this new ballet of mine began long ages back. One might almost say with the first wars, which, making men afraid, taught them to bring on aggression by their precautions for self-defense, so that the necessary pretext and arguments for hatred have, like the painted scenery of an earthly playhouse, accumulated on my hands from age to age, from generation to generation, ready to shift from side to side. Thus, in the coming ballet, you will recognize not without amusement the selfsome insults against Britain's whilom comrades in arms, which Burke and Pitt has used against Britain's present-day allies, the once frog-eating systematic murderers called French, and now the scene-shifters of the press and cabinet of busy above. Listen, you can just hear their hammering, and the almond-mongers have sent all their last millinery. And how is ballet master deaf, your gifted son? My nephew, if you don't mind, dear Cleo. Prejudice is scarred in my eyes. Is sacred in my eyes. Prejudice is sacred in my eyes, and I should hate to be a cause of scandal to my weaker brethren. You ask, how is ballet master deaf? Oh well, we all grow old, and he never had a good constitution to begin with. And then perpetual worry, all those doctors and social reformers spoiling his sport, and almost throwing him back on meteoric horrors, shipwrecks and earthquakes and such like. Yes, indeed, we have had a dull time of it, and a difficult one, in that bourgeois Victorian age with people talking of peace, retrenchment and reform, and even practicing them a little. But this new century has brought back a nobler and more ideal way of thinking. Mankind is getting once more to recognize that man cannot live by bread alone. Just so, dear Cleo. His moral digestion is apt to become torpid from protracted peace and plenty. Then man requires the heroic remedies of primitive medicine, vitalizing lies, alcoholic syrup of catchwords and phrases and sound bites wherein to swallow such materia medica as modern blush to mention, fasting and bloodletting, drastic purges, and Aristotle prescribed by terror and pity, and such upsetting of the whole circulation as spiritual diverses and flagellants employ in order to restore the zest of life. Forgive my corousness, the muse of history. It is no longer every day I can converse with refined intellectuals like you. Philosophers and poets do, of course, join enthusiastically in my shows when, as in the coming ballet, the orchestra of patriotism is engaged. But at other moments my work lies more and more with prejudice and dullness. If boredom were not part of Satan's doom, I sometimes think I should die of it, the muse. In the finest manner, the muse. Boredom is surely the nemesis of all great eminence of this mediocre universe. No, most admirable of sycophants, Satan is always bored. Sycophants. Not through excess of greatness, but for a different reason. A different reason? Indeed. It is presuming on your friendly condescension and the intense interest which history has always taken in what pertains to evil. Is it indiscreet to ask what kind of reason? Says the muse. Satan zegt, Satan's table talk by one who knows him. Don't deny it, Cleo. You see yourself already as my Boswell. The muse, modest but intensely delighted. Oh, my lord, my ambition never soared. Why not? Milton and Goethe and thousands of divines and moralists have published so many spurious accounts of me that I might as well once in a way give the world a little correct information about my humble self. To do so, with your help, dear Cleo, will serve to while away the half hour still remaining until the curtain rises of my new ballet. So let us talk, dear Cleo. Are you comfortable seated? Satan shows a footstool beneath the muse's feet. Always so thoughtful for his friends, our dear Lord Satan. Well then, Satan is bored, because he never feels love. The muse, the world at large, not having the advantage of such delightful experience as mine, has indeed always taxed your lordship with shall we say, a thriving lack of loving kindness. Satan. And correctly, that however is not my meaning. There are other kinds of love and love kindness, Cleo, although the self-righteousness of loveless moralists has talked as if that love of your neighbor, country, enemy, love of the poor by those who are well off, were only kind of love. We are not moralists, my lord, but men and women of the world. Oh, that is not what I am driving at. No allusion that to the daughters of men whom the sons of God found fair, and such like gossip, the notion that real love must be illicit, or at all events such as virtuous persons hide away in modest alcoves, is merely the averted prudery of silly moderns. Love does comprise all that, whether preached from the pulpit or whispered with a wink, but love is something larger and transcends human relations, though it takes its name from them. Love not merely of creatures, but of anything else, places, employments, aspects, ideas, and aims. Love, which means attraction, attachment, preference, the power of delighting in whatever it may be. The mother's delight in her children, the thinker in his problems, the poet and the child in his bare sense and spectacle of life, the plain man's in all his plans and prospects. That is love, love in the widest sense, and that is denied me. You notice I was bored. The secret of that eternal boredom lies in this. Satan, my dear old interviewer, though an omnipotent, is impotent on one point. He cannot take delight. A pause. The muse does not know what she ought to say. Satan cannot love anyone or anything. Satan's only manner of possessing, but he has fashioned half mankind in his own jealous image, is to deny delight to or use to others. For him the sense of power comes in not in making, understanding or loving, but only in spoiling. Shall I tell you what I am? I should esteem it a great favour and of inestimable advantage to my future work. If you would, my lord? Then listen, Cleo. I am the power that wastes. Being unable to use, I render useless. Taking no pleasure in fruition, I smite with barrenness. And the more precious, rare and sorely needed, the more I waste, whatever it may be. Earth and time, opportunities of joy and betterment, man's life, man's labour and man's thought, but most of all man's goodness, so that Satan's truest name might be the waster of human virtue. How deeply interesting, my lord. I trust it may not be presuming that too much on your kindness. I ask your lordship for an instance or two in illustration of the above remarks. Satan, willingly, and since you are a muse, wearing a key pattern, genuine classic on your frock, thou shalt have an instance from Homer. Though you must correct me if my memory plays tricks with the quotation. It is Achilles speaking, farewell, Patroclus. Even in the house of Hades I am now doing all that I have promised thee. 12 sons of noble Trojans shall the flames consume alone with thee. But dogs, not fire, shall devour the flesh of Hector, son of Priam. I don't quite grasp your illustrations, dear lord. Satan. It was cruelty, the wolf not quite purged away out of primitive man. Nothing was being wasted. Do wolves butcher prey which they cannot eat, in order to avenge some dead wolf? Avenge? No, such virtue is human. Virtue, my lord? Surely, loyalty to the dead, one of the virtues I greatly enjoy spoiling, and a virtue which, far from being purged away from modern man, is about to furnish me some sublime effect. But I will not forestall my ballet. Except to tell you that one of its main themes is leitmotifs, as Wagnerians say, is my dealing with just such virtue, the sweet and ardent loyalty of noble lads, ready to die themselves and kill another noble lad, lest their comrades should have died in vain. Loyalty also which makes the bereaved mother send her last son, that his dead elder brothers may not feel forsaken. That is virtue, you will not deny. And of such sacred and much needed virtue I will make a vice. The muse, impressed but not quite sure whether she has really understood. A very original and dramatic notion, to be sure, my lord. Satan, and this leads me to correct what I told you just now. Did I say I took delight in nothing that requires revision? I love sacrifice. The muse, you are a god, and all gods share that taste. Satan, my sacrifices are genuine and wholesale, not wretched like little cakes or grains of incense, or the inferior cuts of sacrificial beasts, nor hearts uplifted in momentary fervour, mere tiny titches of what mankind produces for its own use and pleasure. My sacrifice leaves nothing behind them. Unlike all other gods, I claim the whole. This requires revision. I love sacrifice. The muse, you are a god, and all gods share in that taste. Satan, my sacrifices are genuine and wholesale, not wretched little cakes or grains of incense, or the inferior cuts of sacrificial beasts, nor hearts uplifted in momentary fervour, mere tiny titches of what mankind produces of its own use and pleasure. My sacrifices leave nothing behind them. Unlike all other gods, I claim the whole, and I consume it all. The furnaces of Moloch smoked for me. The furnaces of Moloch smoked for me. The muse is a little taken aback at Satan's sudden emphasis of manner and doubtful whether it is in perfect taste. The muse, I am aware of that, indeed. I might take bold to point out to your lordship that the muse of history can really be trusted to know such facts. The facts, but not the meaning. Nettled, the muse, you are unfair, my lord. Even Milton, though only a poet, was taught by me that every superstition has its own. His list was just a little sectarian, has been invented by your lordship, Satan. But neither your Christian Milton nor your classic self seems to have guessed that it is not the obscene rituals of Baal and Belial, nor the frenzy of mad fanaticism and monastic rule, which brought the offerings most savory to my nostrils. Not Iphigenia, not Iphigenia, her white throat cut like a garlanded heifer to produce a wind. Not Jepeta's daughter bewailing her unwedded girlhood have been the most spotless victims immolated on my altars. Not even the glorious army of martyrs palmed in golden stole, whose blood of rosy blood, avenging hounds of persecution, making them ravenous for more martyred flesh. Nor the countless multitude of uncanonized saints who, killing self, breed selfishness in others. Not the myriad of heroes, reckon them ever since wars began, who died for doubtful causes, or no cause at all. I have received higher obligations. Lambs more emblemished have bled for me. For all true sacrifice is sacrifice to Satan. The muse, you are so eloquent, my lord. But as often happens nowadays with literary geniuses, you overstate your case and damage it by withal paradox. Why is it a precept of the commonest worldly wisdom that sacrifice is at times an excellent investment, whether for the next world or for this. And all moralists have thought, even the craziest Epicureans, that life insists upon it at almost every turn. Satan, a good investment, whether the interest be paid in heavenly glory or in earthly self-compliance, is not a sacrifice, de Cleo. And as to what life demands at every turn, that is reconculation and endurance. Since every turn of life means discrimination and choice, preference of large to less, of future to present, of lasting satisfaction to brief tainted rapture, and of arduous uncertain adventure with its entrancing breathlessness and heartbeat to yawning security. Last but not least, life at every turn bids mankind renounce its appetites, for it is for mankind's most abiding comforts, the standards of the human race. Nay, it often birds the individual man renounce his race in habits and commandments for the sake of that secret treasure and torment his own conscience. Sacrifice such as this, as you rightly say, of profit. But insofar it is no sacrifice, but mere postponement or exchange of desired things, Satan disdains such barter of good for better. He claims absolute obliteration. My sacrifice is sheer loss, and the offering to my essential Godhead is waste. A pause. The muse does not know what she is expected to answer and murmurs merely, to be sure, of course, yes, to be sure. Thus, in all true sacrifice is in the power of evil, and I may ought oftenest obtained by my twin servants delusion and confusion, or in the other words, passion seeing everything through its own likes and dislikes. Likes and dullness, never seeing anything at all. It is the most interesting thing to watch them at their work, heading mankind away from mankind's only efficacious helper, the harsh, responsive reality of things. Thanks largely to his incomparable pair of innocent liars, I may say without lack of modesty that of all gods I am the one who has received the hugest holocaust of wasted virtue, hecatombs compared with which all the bulls and rams offered in Solomon's temple, and all the superb butchery which smeared the marble fairness of the antique world, are of no more account than the minutes of grain of incense which a village acolyte throws on a live coals in his tinsel censer. But at that rate, forgive me, dear Lord Satan, but history has to run the gauntlet of much impertinent why and wherefore. But at that rate, how explain that this small world still contains something, life, wealth, or virtue, which has not yet been wasted in your rites? The question is legitimate, and alas, contains an answer fatal to my greatness. Waste, dear Cleo, by an inconvenient so-called law of nature, tends in its very essence to waste itself away. And then there was a sacrifice in which, well planned though it was daringly attempted, Satan did not succeed. You recollect the business of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Recollect it? Why, I have recorded not one but several conflicting accounts of the occurrence, especially one now authorized and the older one official among the Chaldees, from whom our enterprising Jewish plagiarist took it, but merely to change its bearing, and so often happens when men of letters and theologians work on each other's copy. And since you have alluded to this justly popular story, I can't resist the opportunity of asserting once and for all what precisely among such conflicting versions really was your lordship's part in that, shall we say, bad business? Bad, certainly for me, dear Cleo. Was it so bad for you, my lord? Perhaps not all you aimed at, but surely you scored with something, brought death into the world and all our woe, etc., that was not to be despised. Of course not, says Satan, and moreover brought me, as is Paget in the medieval legends, which makes me self-same serve for the wood of the true cross, brought me, though unsuccessful, the sublimest sacrifice my elders ever gloried in. Knowingly, the muse, that has long since been my view, and sundry early Christian theologians nears the source, but since branded as heretical, went so far as to declare that it was to your lordship that the deity found himself obliged, like the patriarch Abraham, to offer up his son. This circumstance has indeed made me suspect that the tree in question could not really have been planted by the Creator, like some horticultural exhibit intended to be looked at but not eaten of. The muse hesitates, looking at Satan with the embracement of a person not certain of having guessed the truth, and still less certain whether the truth will be welcome. Satan contemptuously, God neither planned nor forbade its use. So far you guess is right. Delighted, says the muse, I thought as much. Then, your lordship must not forgive my indiscretion, but history's greatest joy is after all that of an occasional shrewd look through a millstone. Then, since much really was the case, I mean that tree was not being planted by God, I must have been planted by. The muse looks at Satan as much as to ask, by you? In short, in other words, it was planted by Satan. Suddenly, to the muse, amazement and almost consternation, by man and man's wife, women. The all-Creator gave the seed, but like his other seeds, the original multifold power scattered it, broadcast to lie dormant or quicken or perish as might be. Man saved it from the vast indifferent lavishness, and like the ear of wild weed, put it into chosen soil, watering and cherishing it as it sprouted, that he might eat its fruit, and his children shelter in its shade. The muse, to be sure, my lordship, the precise particulars had somehow escaped my memory. History has really too many things to remember. You were not there, my dear. I was, and I will give history a little lesson in her own subject. Nettled but inquisitive. Your lordship's conversation cannot fail to be instructive. Well then, this is the story of the tree of knowledge. In the beginning, which had no beginning, mere timeless, aimless, chaos and old night, creation stirred, creating its own powers, the multifold of quickening forces making the for shape from substance and for soul from motion. I was not born yet. The muse, still irritated. That much is not unknown. You were an afterthought, my dear Lord Satan, as benefits a rebel. Not a rebel, Cleo, but like many who pass for such a staunch conservative, I oppose the coming change, loyal to the chaos and darkness, who had given me birth. I resolved to turn this new-fangled order into anarchy, so when soul quickened within body, I saw to clogging it by body's clinging habits, and in return unsettled secure instincts with half-fledged reason. Man was not hence neither good nor evil, but in the lowest Brutus already pain and pleasure emerged, the great creative pulse determining life's tides. And at once I seized upon them for my purpose, employing pleasure to increase pain. Then, as your Milton put it, I saw in good the means to evil, so soon as good and evil came along with man. And to this purpose I sought to turn that tree planted from God's seed in God's great park, warping its growth, and when it grew despite me, filling its fruitful branches with chimeras and harpies of all foul kinds. That is truly interesting. But may I point out that your lordship's nomenclature lacks a trifle in precision. At one moment you call the tree in question tree of knowledge, at another the tree of good and evil. Truly interesting. They are the same, for unknown good is not good, nor evil evil. Words betoken man's choice and answering to man's needs. I see. That would account for man's planting that particular tree. Instead of, well, your lordship. Satan looks at the muse in amusement. Instead of me? Of me, de Cleo? Oh, history, you are a great goose. Silly goose. I have ever guessed. Why that tree? Plantings means my doom. However long postponed by manifold arts, that tree, why I've attacked it with 100-fold devices. Droughts, hurricanes, and loathsome parasites, and the obscene enouts of devils turned to swine. I've bled its sap, stripped of its bark, and scarred the roots and branched it with frost and fire. Urge man to cut it down, lest it should give a upas and strangle all his children in its growth. I've borrowed all Jove official lightnings to blast it. I have seen it parch and wither, branch drop after branch, crop, mildew after crop, but alas, only to note with anguish new blossoms and ever unexpected shoots. I, Satan, planted that hateful holy tree. Oh, Cleo, muse of history, that even you could think, why that tree which clasps with 100 branches as willing heavens is at the same time deliving its Milton roots and rootless deeper and further into chaos and darkness, narrowing and squeezing this hell of mine till it becomes no bigger than this pretty little hand of yours. I will tell you a secret, Cleo. Absurd as it may present sound, someday there will be no more room for Satan. Indeed, that is, I own a most disheartening superstition, and accounts for a slight vein of, may I call it, morbidness, which I gave grief to notice in your lordship's previous remarks. I must not, however, hide from you that there have been rumours to the effect of Satan being, well, more correctly described as long vivid than as immortal in the literal sense. If this be true, let me remind you of the saying of that enlightened ruler Sarantapulus, eat, drink, and be merry, the rest is not worth a fig. Satan ironically pressing her hand. Dear gossip history, not Job's comforter, but Satan's. And think what opportunities you still have before you, says the muse, although you have made clear to me that it is a case, as a poet is so charmingly puts it, of gathering your rosebuds while you may. A European war lasting for years may surely be accounted such, for that I am correctly informed is the subject of the new ballet to which you have so graciously invited poor old Cleo. Satan kissing her fingertips carefully. Mwah, just so, my liege of life, though good for many 1,000 years, is shortening, shrinking with every great success of mine, like the Peau de Chagrin or in Balzac romance. I may, however, tell you that there is another and more pressing reason why I have hurried on this great new spectacle. The muse. The present moment is eminently propitious. I am told by one or two leaders of modern thought who frequently my saloon that mankind has attained amazing control over science means without so far of inclining of science, discipline and aims. 20th century men appear to be slum and warehouse savages, retaining the worship of all the good old tribal fetishes and racy obscene emblems, and carry on their ancient cannibal habits under newfangled and decent names. Yet, at the same time wielding thanks to some dozen men of genius. Waste of genius! Waste of science, there you have a thriving sample of my sport. The muse not to be interrupted. Wielding, as I said, appliances which, without enlarging mind or heart, abolish space and multiply all brutish power 1,000-fold. If this account is true, no moment could be better suited for a dance of death, such as the poor unsophisticated Middle Ages never imagined in their most celebrated nightmares. Satan, who has politely suppressed a yawn. Oh, you are rightly informed as benefits the muse of history, but that is not the most urgent reason for hurrying my monstrous entertainment. Between you and me, in the very strictest confidence, dear Cleo, my ballet master Death is growing old. The muse, you have hinted something to that effect, and I confess that I have myself noticed that not without the deepest concern that our general friend has been looking anything but well of late, and seems to be dosing some of his faculties. He is said to have been a gay dog in his prime, loving excess for its own sake, and its whispers addicted more and more to eccentric pleasures. Such lack of self-restraint tells, alas, even the most robust constitution in the long run. Dear old ballet master Death, un vieux marcheur, as the French classics say, and now getting on, peu gaga, I fear. Still pretty spry, but tabatic and threatened with creeping paralysis. His constitution, though I say it, was never really good. Sin, his poor dear mother was always somewhat of an invalid, and the intermarriage of very close relations does not, alas, result in robust offspring. Well, I shall be the first to suffer for these peccadilloes of my youth. My poor old nephew, alas, dear Cleo, our dear incomparable ballet master Death is not with us for much longer. The muse, you have my deepest sympathy in your, more than paternal anxiety, but there is no real danger. I mean, danger of, surely, I see as everyone must see that ballet master Death is no longer what he was, and that science, I begin to understand the prejudice you've shown against the tree of knowledge, as almost as an Irishman might say, been the death of him. He has been warned of one pestilence after another. Famines are growing scarce, and except in the mystic Orient, religious massacres are everywhere marked. Trespass, such constant interference cannot fail to tell on his sensitive nerves, and spoil poor Death's temper, which was never good. But I am glad to remember that in his case, you need never apprehend the very worst. Death, at all events, can never be outright. Written before the mastic and the famine, which is not only revealed but exploited. He and the creative power, elan vital, as my friend Bergson calls it, are the two immortals. Not this Death, not his Death, this Death. Not my ballet master, my jester in ordinary, my rowdy boon companion, my incomparable, atrocious, grim, leering, lewd, worm-eating scarecrow. He, alas, can die, and to my sorrow will. The immortal is the other. The other what? The other Death, the true one, for although history has not grasped that secret, our ballet master merely usurps his name and functions. Scared, says the muse. In that case, what on earth is your ballet master's real name? He has too many different names to be called by any single one, unless the name is Horror. He is wasting, sickness, pestilence, famine, contamination, crime and war, contamination, crime and war. That being the case, men in speaking of him must often use and profane the sacred name of death, the sacred name of death. This one, my ballet master, is, as Milton indiscreetly printed and published, a very near and dear relative of mine, born in my salad days of sin. Another very near relative, as all of us children and grandchildren, more or less incestuous, as you know, of the primeval chaos. Believe me, my dear Lord Satan, I had no intention of raking up such intimate family details, but tell me about this other one, this true death, since you have called him that. The true death, says Satan, he has been my enemy since the beginning. Like me, he is an archangel, but mightier, great natural death, twin of sleep and foster brother of love. He was born by virgin birth, of life herself, to be the marshal of life's triumphal progress. He is not often seen of man, although he works unconsciously among inanimate things, and his serene face shines through the autumn woods, and thus it comes about that my ballet master usurps his part and name. Yet, at times poets and sages have caught glimpses of his tender eyes, and in brief lulls of evil, when light irradiated some tiniest corner of the world, favored people have had brief visions of him, or heard the quiet rustle of his wings. Through death is that grave, gracious genius, brother of the sad, sweet Hermes, who conducts the souls carved by Ionian masons on the great pillar of Ephesus, naked and winged and lovely, marshalling life's slow triumph. And for he it is who makes room for newcomers in just turn, securing the world for youth and betterment. He also brings perfect peace to those whose other wishes had been filled, brimful and cruelly denied. And he leads by the hand that love, who often lurks unconscious till loss awakens it to sweet solemn plenitude. Such is the true death, the natural, beneficent, and also the immortal. Satan pauses, passing his hands across his brow, but with him, dear muse of history, Satan has no truck. And now the moment nears when we must ascend from this silent nest of brooding evil to meet my death, Satan's obscene, uproarious ballet master, whose manifold pranks convert the earth into the real hell, which silly mortals fable here below. Is there anything you would still ask me to explain, good old Cleo? That is indeed, my lord. We have talked so much philosophy, very instructive, no doubt, but just a little bit too abstract for my taste, that I have had no opportunity of so much as inquiring the title of your new ballet and the names of its performers. I understand it is to be serious, not comic. The greatest tragedies, dear Cleo, have been founded on error, never without an element of the grotesque. But this ludicrous side always escapes those who take part in them, for if they saw the full absurdity, they would refuse to act these frightful scenes. They take it seriously, poor creatures, and no wonder. But to you, dear muse of history, and your friends to the idle ages to come, this ballet of the nations, for it is title, will be the unending source of rhetoric, mistaken lessons, and of such voluptuous horror as thrilled the Vestal virgins in their cushioned seats high above the arena. And I doubt whether your elevated taste, but I forgot you do condescend to anecdote, will quite appreciate the preposterousness which underlies it all. But to return, the corps de ballet is of course composed of the various nations, as the name imports. For the necessary music, I have a choice band of human passions. Those who hide their faces are red-cried fly, to be distinguished persons like yourself and the others who go handsomely masked and stilled. Some also of the simplest, purest, noblest idealism, love of adventure, pity, and indignation, above all, heroism. The Muse. And patriotism, first and foremost. Satan, nay, 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 nay. Patriotism is the collective name of the whole orchestra, whom I trained for these performances. Human passion, splendid or sordid, delicate or nasty, all seated, checked by jowl, playing their instruments, without whose steady flow of sublime music and nerve-rending din the nations could not dance their dance of death, obedient to my great ballet master Baton. To keep his music up, drinks will be handled round by well-trained lackeys of the press and pulpit, hot and acrid for coarse palates, or heady and full of fuddling fumes, also subtler ones such as make everyday trifles seem to the opium dreamer vast and rainbowed wonderful, plentiful, deep draughts of words, words and never more words, and ever more words, words and ever more words, concocted in my special distillery to be learned reclusive, like those white-robal monks who manufacture fairy liquors in remote Alpine glens, thus, as I hope, or else by other arts sundry among the virtues will leave their stalls and join in with my band, and those too shocked to join will drop to sleep and dream of man's purification through suffering. Satan laughs quietly. The Muse considerably louder, clapping her hands. Oh, one word more, my lord. In the priceless biographical notes which your kindness had vouchsafed me, I remarked that as interviews put these things, your favorite pastime and chief business in life, says Satan. The Muse, consulting a memoriam, have I got it down correctly, Satan impatiently, is waste. Yes, keep that well in mind, dear Cleo. It is the key to all I ever do, and therefore to my coming ballet. The Muse, meticulously still fingering her notes. It was, of course, with reference to the coming performance that I inquired. Waste. Well, of course, waste of human life, wealth, tears, properties, liberties of all kinds. Moreover, Satan interrupting, and more to my purpose even, waste of the intelligence, unselfishness, and effort which should have rid the world of manifold other evils. The Muse going on precautiously. Moreover, as those fashionable cranks who call themselves eugenists tell us, waste also are inheritable figure of the race. Only strikers and varicose persons and such as make war profits or are elderly remaining over to reproduce the genus homo. Is that correct, my lord? As far as it goes. But such gross and obvious wastefulness is not my highest aim. Satan is no materialist, my dear Muse, and for him mere life and happiness must never be the things man puts most store by. You may have heard this doctrine preached elsewhere than here, in fact by moralists and divines ever since the world began. I have heard it, and am happy to say that I hear it still on all hands, but with the addition, saving your lordship presence, that this doctrine emanates, well, to put it plainly, from God. Satan. That God, dear unsuspecting Cleo, was Satan in disguise. It is possible that history has not yet made a note of some, at least, or of the many Elias's surnames, to which my business obliged me to have recourse from time to time. But to return, what were we talking about? To be sure, self-sacrifice, well, take my word for it, the great creative reality whom all men call God or nature has no taste for barren flowers of virtue. It is Satan who grows them with much care and pride. I think I told you the lamentable fact that I am impotent to take delight in anything, with one exception, the odor of such sanctity as bears no fruit ravages my disembodied senses, and as beseems the saints in whom I nurture it, admit me back to heavenly joys. Virtue for virtue's own sake, that is what I ask for, since to be to the genuine connoisseur in spiritual realities, to the full-fledged moral estate that I am, the beauty of self-sacrifice must never be marred by base utility. My coming ballet will make that clear to you. You shall hear the devastating blast of indignation's wings and pity's unforgiving sobs. You shall be shown young heroism, radiance faced, as blind as the stone statue, but I notice there is something more you want me to explain? The muse, hesitating. Your lordship has been so generous of information that, in short, I fear my notes may present some slight obscurity or incoherence when I come to reread them. It is asking too great a favor to say how deeply grateful I should be if you would repeat once more your leading definition of yourself. Satan, with the greatest pleasure, dictates, I am the waster of all sorts of virtue. The muse bows effusive thanks. But hark, says Satan, Cerberus once more at his alarmus. Go, dear muse of history, there, those must be your friends, the vain and bodiless, the most effective ages to come. Please open to them. The muse disappears and bolts are heard being drawn. Meanwhile, Satan throws himself back weary in his corner of the sofa, passes his hand over his eyes, and musters meditatively to himself. Satan, the ballet of nations, my new masterpiece, and as I sometimes fear, at last of its time, the last of its time honored sort. Well, if the last, let it be the greatest. The muse returns, introducing the chorus of ages to come. Classically draped and veiled in the stuff as dreams are made of. That's dreams are made of. Chorus of ages to come. Your very obedient humble servants at your archangelic lordship commands. The courtesy to the ground. Satan has arisen to meet them and waves a gracious greeting to each number of the chorus. Satan, pray not. Satan, pray do not speak like that, delightful ages to come. Why not half an hour ago I was remarking to our illustrations friend Cleo that besides her own there is no applause I covet as much as that of your most alluring and elusive selves, and like her you are much more than a mere audience, though the most appreciative. History helps me in my shows with her so-called legions, which, as you know, always inculcate the grave untruth that there is nothing new under the sun. And history also makes it her business to keep old wounds from healing, and sees to the hatred flourishing like the green bay tree of victory. Thus the past, or what passes, must muster as past. Collaborate with Satan. You ever disembodied ages to come represent the no less needed assistance of a no less apocalyptic future. Apocalyptic future. The future which is always the future because it can never turn into the present, and which therefore possesses the unparalleled attraction of what can be pursued but never clutched. The same prestige, in fact, enjoyed in pious days by the old-fashioned kingdom of heaven, making men eager to sacrifice the peace and happiness of a tangible today for the sake of the peace and happiness of an unsubstantial tomorrow spun like cobweb out of their own sick brains. But enough! Silence! Come, my fascist scholars of unrealities, come, great recorder of all that does not happen. Let us ascend from hell, brooding stillness to the world's theatre, which awaits you in its eternal patronage, and its lessee and manager myself. Satan signs to the ages to come to troop off in front and follows, offering his arm to the muse of history. End of the first part.